Welcome to the Eternal ROI podcast, where we share the real stories of workplace transformation. And now, here are your hosts, Will Stewart and Chris Patton.
Welcome to the Eternal ROI podcast. Good to have each and every one of you watching and listening along. I'm Will Stewart, joined as always by the CEO of His Way at Work, Chris Patton. Hey, Chris.
Will, how are you?
Doing good. It's good to have you back. We had a couple episodes where Joel was fitting in.
I know. I'm just glad you let me come back.
Well, you know, there's no doubt.
I'm sure he did such a great job. The thought entered your mind I might be replaceable. And
no, not at all. I'm not going to not going to admit to it while we're recording.
Understand.
Well, yeah, we did love having Joel. Joel was fantastic and some great episodes, but it's good to have you back.
The guy's got some passion, doesn't he?
Oh my goodness, so much passion. And he asks phenomenal questions, even just in personal life. When we're sitting together, he's just has a great probing mind. So love it.
Yeah.
So who do we have today?
We have Troy Meacham, and Troy is coming to us from ACR Supply. Troy will tell you more about what exactly they do. But I'll just tell you that our experience and how we bumped up against them His Way at Work, these guys, this company, this whole team, and it goes from the top down, but they are way down the road in this integrating of faith into the work. And they've been recognized. In fact, if you go to their website, you'll see a report from Wheaton College, a preeminent Christian college in the U.S., that they did a study at ACR. They found some tremendous facts there. It's a great read. But we're going to hear from Troy himself today, so I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, same here. Welcome, Troy.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So tell us a little bit about your company, where you guys are, size, what you do, a little bit about that.
Sure. Our company was started by my dad back in 1977. And we are in the distribution world of HVAC and refrigeration supplies. And I joined him as he started 77. March the 18th, it was my 16th birthday, believe it or not. And my dad got a call from his current employee and told him he would let go. They knew he was planning to leave and hang out his own shingle. So it was kind of a Debbie Downer for my birthday dinner that we were going out for, but it was like probably the best thing that ever happened to our family, that day. But either way. And I joined my dad in 1980 right out of school and opened up our first branch location. We called it a business unit in Chapel Hill, North Carolina in 1984. And then in 1988, that's when I accepted Jesus as my Lord and Savior, radically transformed my life. And don't want to get too far down the road here, but those are some of the things that we do. And we currently have about 80 some families we help support. And we have 8 storefront locations around the state of North Carolina, and we have our what we call our central services office in the Research Triangle Park in Durham, which actually we're in the middle of relocating as we speak. So, that's about some basic overview.
So 40 years almost in business, coming up on that major milestone. That's a big deal to go through the ups and downs of economies and presidents and everything that happens in life with a business. What do you attribute to the longevity of your business and how you've grown it?
First and foremost, the Lord. I hate to give the Sunday school answer, but the Lord really sustained us through a lot of stuff over the years, right? Yeah. I mean, He really has. And also I think our intentional focus on people. And I love what Troy Cathy says about Chick-fil-A. He says, we're not in the chicken business, we're in the people business. And I feel the same way about us. We're not really in the HVAC business, we're in the people business. And it's all about focusing on people. My dad, even back when he started the company in 77, it was all about his people and focusing on serving them and leading them well. And most importantly, our customers, because without them, without the phone ringing or somebody coming through the door, we don't have a company. So I think that's probably been the biggest.
So a casual observer, if they just went on your website, they would see there's something different about what you do. I mean, you lead with the study that was done by Wheaton College. You lead with your values and just talking about culture more than you lead about, hey, buy this product or, use us and hire us for whatever your next project is. So there's some very strong intentionality there, and it's important to you. Was that always the case when you guys started back in the 80s? Was that kind of where you were heading with it, or when did it come along some place else in your journey?
Well, like I said, I started in 80. Dad started in 77, and I started 80. 84 opened my first store location. The first 5 years of my career were not stellar. I'll just go ahead and put it out there. I was lost and I was chasing the world. You can imagine, right?
Mm.
A 20-some-year-old guy with a tan, a head full of hair, and a 32-inch waist. I mean, that was just I was just
You're
all over the
bringing back
place.
some memories here
And
too.
so, yeah. But so my dad knew what he was doing. He's a really smart guy. He's a legend in our industry. He's just an amazing man. But he knew what he was doing with me because it was one of those sink or swim moments. He put me over Chapel Hill. He built a building, put 4 walls, a roof on, and left. And he said, "It's all yours." And I went, "Oh no, it's all on me now. I can't. There's nobody else to blame. I've got to really sink or swim." And so that was even before I was a believer. I realized I don't want to be a failure. I don't want to let my dad down, first of all, and I don't want to be a failure. So that began to really just cultivate in me a desire to be excellent in what I did. And so I worked long hours and worked by myself in the store for almost 2 years, and then began to hire some more help, and kind of the rest is history. But yeah, that for me personally, that was one of the biggest moments in my career, other than when I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior in '88. And but that when I started the Carver store in '84, everything began to change. And then '88 came, and then suddenly, to your point earlier, your question earlier, I began to realize after I became a believer that I loved doing mission work. I loved doing ministry work at my church in Durham, where I accepted Christ. And suddenly, I realized one day I had this revelation. I went, "Oh my goodness, my the marketplace is my ministry. ACR is my ministry. The people inside of ACR are my ministry. So I don't have to leave and go halfway around the world, which we still do. We love doing the biblical model, local, regional, international missions, and that's what we do. But began to realize that we can have the biggest ministry impact right here in our own yard. Amen. And that people like us, all of us, we see and get to interact with more lost people than a pastor does. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's just, we get to really make an impact. So hope I answer your question.
So was there a moment that led to you deciding, I can do mission here locally. I can do mission with the people that I'm working with. Is there any kind of big aha moment, or was it one of those things that just kind of came to you?
It did. It came to me over time. It started in '88 when I became a believer. Mm-hmm. And then my dad brought me back into the Durham home office in Durham in the early '90s. I became married. I got married. The Lord I just started praying that Lord would bring somebody into my life that I could spend the rest of my life with. And thank the Lord, He brought me Sherry, my wife, Sherry Meacham. We've now been married 30 years, and she's been such a blessing to me. But she's my partner in crime, if you will. Mm. But it was right after that. And then we had our son a couple of years later. That's when things really began to change in my heart and mind, and I really began to focus on ministry inside of ACR Supply and people. And so what I realized, and I'll tell you what happened. We had this paradigm shift inside of our company after a meeting where me and my dad, who was kind of semi-retired at the time, and our vice president, we kind of sat down and said, "Okay, why are we here? What are we doing?" None of us have been trained professionally in any type of business planning or anything like that. Academically, we just didn't have any of that. And so, which might not be a bad thing, I guess, I don't know, but we didn't have any of that. So we began to really sit down after learning a few things about planning and started putting some stakes in the ground. Okay. But one of the things we did that was really, I think, it was huge for me personally, was we decided to develop our first mission statement. And inside that mission statement at the time, it had the phrase healthy work environment. We wanted to create a healthy work environment for our team. I was going, what does that really mean to me as a believer? What does it mean to have a healthy work environment? And so we began to really focus on that. And everything I was reading, all the courses I was taking, all the continuing ed I was working on was just trying to, how am I going to create a healthy work environment, especially as a believer? And so what I found was one of the hardest parts was we had the 70s, 80s style of management. It was the way it was. It was the standard issue. It was just top down. It's just the way my dad did a great job. And that's how you led back then. But one of the things that we had not done is Dave Ramsey used a phrase called sanctioned incompetence. I'm sure you have heard that before, but
Yes.
when a leader allows dysfunction to go inside of an organization, it's demoralizing. And
Yeah.
so we had a lot of sanctioned incompetence inside our organization. So I figured, well, first thing I need to do is figure out how do we create stakeholders versus employees? How do we truly buy in? And so I started sitting down with some long tenured people, and I would define for them. I say, here's what success looks like, but here's what's broke as it relates to whatever type of dysfunction you have. It could be tardiness, could be gossip, could be toxic behavior, whatever. And here's what we're going to do to fix it. And here's what the future's got to look like. And if we can't get from here to here in this time frame, I love you, but it's just not a good fit, and you can't stay. That sounds horrible. I hate doing those things. It's the worst thing in the world. I don't like doing it because you're messing with people's lives. But what I found was I could no longer continue to burden those individuals who've given everything they've got every single day with those who are not.
Amen.
And I thought, and I think that's being a good steward. And so as we begin to make those changes and implement those things, and I began to really pour into people. And as I said, if I want to help you grow personally, professionally, financially, and spiritually, any way that we can, we'll invest time, effort, money, whatever it takes. So we began to move people from becoming employees over to becoming stakeholders. And we actually have what that looks like defined in a nice little sheet, PowerPoint that I go over in a cultural orientation with our new team members. And so as we begin to do that, I'll be honest with you guys, the culture almost flipped overnight. And as we began to get more like-minded people inside the organization, I pray specifically that the Lord would bring fellow believers into the organization, or that He would transform the lives of those who were inside of ACR Supply who are not believers, and that they would become have a personal relationship with the Lord. And so as we began to see all it began to manifest itself, and it's just like, once the momentum, once you have Mo on your side, it just really began to happen. And now, it's just got its own legs. It's not just Troy anymore doing it. It's everybody. Everybody's pitching in, and everybody's helping contribute to a culture where people get up every day and they want to come to work, where they really enjoy what they do every day. One more point I'll add to that is our purpose statement is to build relationships, impact lives, and glorify God. It's our big purpose statement, BIG. First of all, it's like I said, like Troy Kathy said, it's about people. It's about relationships. That's the things we're going to remember the day we retire. So we're always working on those relationships with each other, as horizontal relationships with our coworkers, with our customers, with our vendor partners. And I want to impact people's lives in such a way so that the day that a Mark or a Corey or a Gene retire, they can look back on their life and say their life was better off because we were part of the ACR family, because we were very intentional in pouring into their lives. So that's why we invest in people. That's why we ask everybody to go through Financial Peace University. It comes to our company. I teach a course called Crucial Conversations Training. Everybody's got to take that course. We're helping people, have the tools for life to be successful in life. And hopefully all this continues to point them to the Lord, which is our last part of our purpose statement, to glorify God. And that's the only rule I live by. I have one rule that I live by. I try to glorify God in all that I do. How I treat my wife, how I treat our coworkers, our team members, how we treat our vendor partners, and how we treat our customers. If we fulfill that one rule of glorifying God, then I think we'll be successful in the eyes of the Lord. And we all work for an audience of one, right?
Yes.
That's awesome.
It's cool to me how you made the statement. We didn't have any business education. You and your dad, the VP, none of the three of you guys had this incredible academic resume. But if I take some of the highlights out of what you just answered, this is what everybody needs to do. Number one is you got to stop and decide, hey, what are we about? Let's not just keep doing what we do every day. Let's hit pause for a minute as leadership, step outside the merry-go-round and start making some decisions. Let's put some stakes in the ground. Let's say, this is what we're about. And out of that comes a mission statement. Now, it wasn't initially glorify God, but that was the underpinnings, I imagine, and you start down that path. So stepping off to the side, determining what we're about. And then you said the part that you hate is I'm going to have to set these expectations and ask you to leave if you don't meet them. But the truth
Tough.
is, Troy, everybody needs the clear expectations. Here's the problem. Too many of the business owners, and I even was in this role for a period in our family business, is you think, well, I'm going to love on them and I'm going to be nice and I'm going to respect them by not going to that point. But what I'm doing is disrespecting them by not clarifying my expectations. I just hope they guess them, right? So you clarified expectations. You said, hey, here's what it means to be a part of this team. And if you can do this, and I'll even help you do it. But if you can't, or if worse, if you don't want to, or you're not willing to, I can't make those other folks that are keep carrying you.
Exactly.
And that's loving them to a point where hopefully those that exited stopped and said, wait a minute, what do I have to do different the next time? And you give them that chance, right? But then you start pouring into these people. And here's some points I want to make on this. All of these steps along the way, when I hear CEOs or business owners come and say, you know, I understand what all you guys are doing, but you know, I've got a small company or I'm not sure where to start. How do I get started? You just described it. You just laid out the game plan there, right? Stops, get to the side, lay out put some stakes in the ground, put your mission statement together, start setting clear expectations with the stakeholders, the team, and then start developing them as a whole person. And a lot of people say, well, we just don't have time to stop the business and teach financial peace. All right, here's your alternative. Don't do that. And your employees struggle financially. They come to work with baggage in their mind and their heart, and they're not as effective or productive over years. Whereas if we just take 13 weeks, we can have much more productive and better if you're only selfishly looking at the business. But then obviously it changes their life. So anyway, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I want to point out some things that the listener needs to grab hold of. Go back and listen again to what Troy just said from the beginning of that question. It started with we stepped off of the side to decide what we're about and walk through that process.
If I could add one thing to that real quick too, and one of the things that after you look back, you look, oh, gosh, how can I be so stupid? But we would expect people to understand and contribute to a work culture that we never defined for them.
Exactly.
I'm like, I had this
How in the
revelation
world?
one day. I went, oh my gosh, how in the world are they supposed to know what a successful culture looks like if we don't paint a very clear picture, to your point? So now what we do is part of our onboarding and orientation process is I sit down with every single new team member. I have 2 appointments tomorrow, by the way. And I spend an hour and a half, 2 hours with them going over what the culture expectations are. And I paint a very clear picture of what is and is not success as far as contributing to. I tell everybody, you have to contribute to the culture and the profitability every single day. We are a for-profit ministry. We have to make money. If we can't make money, then we can't build an orphanage in Burkina Faso, Africa. We can't work with Operation Resolute. We can't do all these other things either. We can't put food on the table for our 80-some families. So, but yeah, sorry, I just wanted to add that's been such a game changer. When we did that, we started doing that. People knew exactly, and we're not perfect. Don't get me wrong, and I don't live in a dream world either. I realize we have dysfunction. We had our warts like everybody else does, but we're constantly promoting and working on the direction. We're trying to go the direction we want our culture to go. We drive the culture. We don't let it drive us, if that makes sense.
It's going to develop. Either you're going to be in control and driving it, or you're just going to let it happen. But culture happens.
There is a culture.
There is a culture, good or bad, right?
Very
Let me
much
ask you this specifically, Troy. When you're sitting with these new employees, these new team members, stakeholders, and you're doing this orientation, how do you address the faith aspect? Because a lot of the CEOs we talk to, they're saying, well, I'm scared I'm going to get sued. I don't want to force somebody to believe what I believe. You know, how do I have to preach at them? Do they have to be a Christian to work here? Speak to that.
Yeah. So no, we don't. By the time they've gotten to me in that culture, that orientation piece, they already know. With all of our advertisements, well, if we ever do anything online, most of our times our referral, our stuff is personal referral. That's the direction we like to go. But we do hire from Indeed. We use other online tools as well. But usually they've already read that we're a faith-based organization, that We our purpose statement. They've already seen that. They know what they're getting into. So, and by the time they get to me, when we get to our guiding principles, I have a whole section in our orientation on that. When I go over, and many times I'll share my testimony if the timing is right, and that person, I think they're comfortable if I'll go ahead and share my personal testimony about how I came to faith in Christ. But probably I'd say about half of the people that we hire on a regular basis, maybe a little bit more, are actively living out their faith every day in Jesus Christ. And then there's a lot, there's some that are not, but I want those lost people that will live by a set of guiding principles that transcend everything, right?
Sure.
And so we want them to have the values of integrity and so on, but at the same time, if we have somebody come in the organization that's not a believer, our goal is for them by the time they retire or if they leave, that they know Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior.
That's great. So when let's say an employee or a new stakeholder is sitting in that orientation with you, and they come right out of the gate and they say, Mr. Meacham, I've really enjoyed the process so far. I know you guys are a Christian company. I've seen that. That's just not my faith. What are your expectations of me in regards to that? If I stay for the next 5 to 10 years, what am I going to experience from that standpoint where I really don't have that faith and I'm not looking for it? How do you respond to that?
I want to pull up a note here because I want to make sure I get this right. But we don't want people to. I can't legally say you have to be a Christian to work at ACR Supply anyway. But we want people to live by our 6 values. They are humble, hungry, smart, ethical, and I'm gonna miss the other 2. Doggone it! That's why I want to get my notes up. But either way, we just added these last 3. Stakeholders, one of them, and I'll come back to the other one. But so by the time they get done with our HR director, Dee, she's going over all these things in depth.
Sure.
And we say out loud, no, you don't have to be able to come to work at ACR Supply. You don't have to be follow Jesus Christ, but you have to live by these values. We have to know that we can trust you because you can trust us, and so on. And so, and I think that helps us. I make it when I'm doing these orientations, I really make it relaxed. We have a cup of coffee, we sit down. I've got a number of videos I show them. I have a number of things we talk about. It's a very casual, very informal type setting. And so I'm not one to come across real strong. I don't like to beat people over the head with the Bible, but I want them to be able to look at my life and other people's lives inside of ACR Supply and say, I want what they got. Yes. That's how I want to live my life. And so that's what we try to do. Yeah. And so, and again, it goes back to those 6 values so that's kind of where it all starts. And we make sure that they align with those. We actually have character assessments that we use on the front end to make sure that they're aligning with our values.
Excellent. Very cool.
So as you're creating this culture and you're growing this culture, I'm sure there are a lot of people that were saying, man, it's fantastic. I mean, the expectations are clear. They're setting these goals. They're explaining to me what a good culture is. I know the boundaries in which I can work. I know how I'm judged, by the people I'm accountable to. This is fantastic. And then you start bringing in the God part of it, and then sometimes there can be pushback. Sometimes there can be people who be like, wait, this is too much. Talk about that process as you started, maybe talking about God more. Maybe it was from the beginning, I don't know, or if it came kind of toward the middle. But as you were starting to turn the company culture around, and as you were integrating, faith into the workplace, tell us a little bit about what you did and the reaction and how you overcame maybe some objections there.
Yeah, man. Wow. That's a loaded question. There's a lot to that. My father was a believer. He's got a wonderful testimony as well. But we were pretty much like every other 70s, 80s business culture where we didn't talk about a lot of those things, at least not in a overall company functions, those kind of things. And so as I became a believer in 88, I had strong conviction. And another thing that's really helped me many years ago, I joined C12. I can't remember how many years it's been, 13 or 14 years ago. And but those are some of the things I began to really utilize and just really I just had this conviction that I needed to, if I'm not the same person on Monday morning that I am on Sunday, then that means I'm a hypocrite.
That's a problem.
And so to hide your faith during the week versus living it out on the weekend, I mean, just it doesn't make sense. Matter of fact, you live a conflicted life. And so I just began to live it out and began to share. I began to share the gospel with people I work with and listen, I hate talking about myself like this, and I didn't do it as much as I should, but that's how I started, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I began to slowly but surely implement these things that would help us understand how can we live out our lives and be excellent for the Lord in what we do every single day. But I tell you something, the biggest transformation happened within myself, and that's what probably ignited, if you will, a cultural thing inside the company. Because in '88, when I became a believer and then came back to the home office in the early '90s, it was pretty. I think I was living my life completely different, because I explained to you earlier what I was like,
Sure.
and you come back and you have a changed life, and you're transformed the way the Lord does that, right? It's got to be from God. It's got to be from Him, because this knothead, he could never,
Yeah.
and so he could never live his life in such a way, would never want to do something like that, because I knew who he was before, and now I know who he is now. It's like, what's the guy said, in Scripture, it says, all I know is before I was blind, but now I can see.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's all I could say, and that's what I told people, and so it gave me an opportunity to begin to really share. Okay, what changed in your life? What happened? And so began to live that out slowly but surely. The courses I was taking, the things I was reading, a lot of books I was reading began to help me understand how I could very simply, incrementally, just begin to integrate my faith in the workplace every single day. But it all starts with who you are every day. It all starts with your behavior. Are you consistent? Do you live a life of integrity? Do you glorify God in your life? And so people can tell. If you're going to live a hypocritical lifestyle, and you're going to be, a very inconsistent leader, up one day, down the next, and it's going to be really hard, and you're not going to have a healthy culture inside your workplace. I hope I answered your question. I rambled a little bit there. Sorry.
No, that's great. And I love that you're really focused on culture, before starting anything else, and trying to get the culture right. Because people aren't going to listen to you if you're in a toxic culture, and then you're like, here, let me tell you about Jesus.
Yeah, but here's the thing I'm hearing from you, Troy, is you're not focused first on culture. You're focused first on you. And the point there is, as a business owner, business leader, we've got a primary responsibility. No, excuse me. As a disciple of Christ, we have a primary responsibility to be a disciple, to continue to grow and take in information, learn and grow, and allow God to change us. And you just went through, in a kind of haphazard way, while I was reading these books earlier, you mentioned continuing education, these courses I was taking. Pause. Everybody's not doing that. And yet they want to show up to work on Monday and have this incredible culture. You got to start with you. And I know it's not about you.
Yeah.
It's not about any of us individually, but as a pattern or an example to follow, if we're not constantly sharpening the saw ourselves, if we're not working on our own boundaries, right, and becoming better, then the culture we're going to lead is going to stink.
No,
or it's going to be shallow. It's going to be fragile. True. So I just commend you on that. But I also, again, want to bring out this fact that, guys, and ladies, as listeners, start with yourself, and let's always be a growing and learning leader. And, when you have a meeting and somebody says, well, what have you learned lately? You ought to be able to pop something out pretty quick. If it's been months or years since you've learned something, that's a problem.
If you keep learning the same thing.
Yeah. Well, that's a different issue altogether. But, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah. Because it's caught, not taught, right? I mean, you do teach it eventually. I mean, obviously you have to express it, but I mean, people feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. And they'll know the difference.
They really do.
Yep.
So as someone who's wanting to transform their culture, as someone who's wanting to make it a culture that's rich, what were some of let's talk meat and taters for a second. Some of the practical things that you've done that you're like, man, this was a great idea, and I highly recommend people do this.
Gotcha. Gosh. Okay. So there's a number of them. So I got it in no particular order. Okay.
Just go for it.
About the same time I joined C12, actually before that, I went to Dave Ramsey's Entre Leadership course. One of the very first ones they had in Nashville many, many years ago. And I learned over that week how Dave, as a believer, began to build his business. And it's very practical. We're talking meat and potatoes. All right. That blew me away hearing his testimony, hearing his story, of where he had come from, where he was at then, and even now. And so I've been back 5 times. I've been to the Master Series 5 times. I've been to about another 4 or 5 of the summits that they have.
Awesome. So
I've learned something every time, right? Because I always realize I've got to keep growing. I'm 60 years old. I need to keep growing. I need to keep investing and helping challenge myself to grow in all these areas, personally, professionally, financially, spiritually, and all those. And so, but when I did that, I came back and there was a black book they gave you. It's a workbook for the whole week. That was a week-long class, all day long. I mean, it's a lot of information, but it's how they built their business. And it's every aspect of the business. I came back and I set that book on my desk. And a lot of times you put that book on your desk and never pay attention again. But what I did was I began to incrementally, one piece at a time, implement many of the best practices Dave had used in his organization. If you look inside of ACR Supply now, it looks a lot like Ramsey Solutions and Dave's organization, because it's just a lot of the things we've used. So that's probably one of the bigger transformational things that I've done for me personally, because it starts with me, but I began to implement those things throughout the organization. And so also we've done a lot of things with John Maxwell over the years and some of his material. We actually have a 3-year leadership development program, which can get into later on, but it's called Lead. And it's got a ton of the materials that shaped and formed my life. It's got audio, it's got books, it's got scripture in those 3 years of material that the reason we put them in there is because it's what helped transform me and shape my life into being who I am in the Lord now, as far as the marketplace. So those were some big ones. And then it has some, I did Dale Carnegie course early on. I still recommend that. It's been around forever, but early on, my dad thought he knew that I needed to do something. I'm an introvert by nature. I really am, and so that really that helped me come out of my shell a little bit, because he knew if I was going to be able to even try to run the organization at some point, I really needed to grow as a leader. So he got a lot of investment in me and going to these different things and learning in those ways. But then some key books, obviously the Bible, and then but I began to read all kinds of leadership books. All of Lencioni's stuff that's been out for a long time. A lot of those have been transformational. Probably the biggest one for me is 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I think every organization on the planet should read that book. They need to read that book. It's been so helpful for me.
So good. Yeah.
Those are some real. And then I joined C12. You ask about what's helped me. Buck, who's the original founder of C12, he's got a book, and I think it's got electronic file now, but it was a book about ministry ideas. Oh my goodness. If you can get your hands on that book, it is fantastic. And so again, that's another book I took, and I said, okay, boom, 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 boom. It's even before we started ACR Cares, this is years ago. I started implementing these small little things, like putting a watermark on our scripture on our invoices, so that we send invoices out that they have a watermark scripture. We change it every quarter. Those just simple things like this that you can do to show who you are in Christ and what the Lord means to you and your organization. I hope I answered your question.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
in spades. And I will stop to say you are now business educated. You said earlier you are not. If you aren't now, there's no chance. Between Ramsey and John Maxwell and all those that you've mentioned, constant. You are a constant reader and learner.
And C12 has been a big part of that too.
Yes.
The material in there. I mean, it's just, I could go on and on, but it's been awesome. It's been awesome journey, and I've really enjoyed it. But I really believe I meant what I said, though. If your people aren't growing, your organization's not going to grow.
That's right.
That's why we focus so much on growth, not just technical and product knowledge, but I'm talking about from a professional and a spiritual aspect as well.
Yes.
So how do you grow your people? What are some of the steps you do? You talked about you personally, but how do you encourage growth in your people?
Sure. We have a leadership development program called LEAD. At one time, we called it Future Leaders. We changed the name to LEAD a couple of years ago. And this is probably the biggest vessel we use to grow our people. We do a lot of one-off things quite often. Last year with COVID, not as much so, right? But before that, we did a lot of one-offs. I'll run across an article. We'll all read it, or maybe I'll read it with this group, and then we'll review it. We'll do a Zoom call or something and talk about it. But that LEAD program, I would say now over half of our people have been through LEAD, and that's a lot of people. And so guess what? Some of them aren't here anymore, but they got the benefit of going through LEAD. And so, but the first year is a workshop type setup where we have once a month, 3 hours during the month, come together where there's all kind of topics that we do in workshop format. We have an executive coach, and I help contribute. Kevin helps contribute some. We have different people, and we're actually revamping that first year right now as we speak. But we go through how to deal with conflict, how to healthy communication, what does that look like, and so on. So that's 1 year. And to get into the program, you actually have to be nominated by one of your leaders. And so your leader says, I really want so-and-so to get into LEAD and to begin to grow and to learn the skills he needs to be successful. And then when they get nominated, they have to write an essay about why they want to be in the LEAD program. Then that essay comes to me. And then I get an ad hoc committee together. We vote yay or nay. Rarely do we not accept somebody in, but we have turned a few people away in the past, but want to make sure they're ready for the program. And so, but yeah, they get nominated, they write the essay, and then we start out on January, September and year one of LEAD, and then it goes all the way through May. We try to stay out of the summer months; it's our busiest time. Yeah. The second year has been traditionally all one-on-one mentoring, and so myself. I did it by myself for many years, and now Corey Salyard's our COO, and Kevin Parsley with marketing. Kevin's a 40-year veteran in the industry and just a wonderful communicator and a wonderful leader. Him and Corey both now we're doing the one-on-one. So what that looks like is all these books and materials, along with a lot of audios and videos that we have. We have a curriculum set, and everybody does their homework each month. By the way, every time you come on board, year 1, year 2, or year 3, you have to sign a covenant. The covenant basically states that you're going to actually do the work, you're going to show up on time, and that you're actually going to do and put the effort into it, because you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. Mm-hmm. So that's what the second year looks like. And so again, all these materials that shape my life, that year 2 is saturated with that. So we might read a book a month along with listening to a John Maxwell audio or something like that. Henry Cloud, another great one that we use a lot of his material. And in year 3 is we read a book 1 month. We focus on a chapter of Philippians 1 month, and then we do an audio from John Maxwell, and then rotate it again for the entire year. And that's pretty much what LEAD looks like. But what that does, guys, is it gives you a lot of one-on-one time with your team members inside the organization, along with a few of the key leaders. And you talk about breaking down barriers and walls and building trust and building rapport. Because we all know it starts with trust, and it's been instrumental in really helping us create the culture we described earlier. But that's some real practical ways that we help develop our people. But again, there's a lot of one-off stuff. I mean, years ago, I took our entire leadership team, all of our managers across the board. I took them to a Dave Ramsey one-day event. So there's all kind of things you can find to do. A number of C12 conferences that we sent. Peter from Polydeck, he spoke up here at a C12 at a regional conference number of years ago, and I took our entire leadership team. So it's just, again, being intentional always finding opportunities to help grow your people so that your organization will grow.
Man,
That's powerful.
that's huge. So turn outward, or no, let me back up. Man, I almost really messed up. Don't turn outward. So ACR Cares. So it's not outward, it's inward as well as outward. So talk to us about ACR Cares. How did that come about? You just mentioned earlier a revamp of that. So talk to us about what you're doing there.
Sure. So about, let's see, it was about 15 years ago, when about 15, 16 years ago when I bought the company from my dad. And so at that time I had to take out a pretty large loan from the bank. But as we began to march through paying that off and still growing the company and doing all the things we're talking about, one of the things that me and my wife decided, Sherry, when we got debt free from that loan perspective, we still have debt, line of credit, those kind of things. But when we paid off the loan to the bank, which we did 2 years earlier, we wanted to do something for the widows and orphans. We wanted this. That's our heart. That's what we wanted to do. And so as I began to think about that and all that was happening, this whole idea through C12 came up about having some type of caring committee. And a number of other organizations had done it. So what we did was we put a team together, and we went and visited Co-Consolidated in Charlotte, and went down to see the team at Polydeck, and we just became sponges, and we were just watching and looking at everything and just trying to, okay, how can we do this as an organization? How can we create not just a caring culture, but also an intentional ministry arm of the organization? And so we got, those two organizations, I'm sure, and you can imagine all the information that we got,
overload, and
all the real practical. It's just like we're overwhelmed, right?
Sure.
And so, but we got all that. We brought it all back, and we put a committee together. We had representation from each store location across the state. And we began in our own unsophisticated way, just trying to move forward. And I think Peter's one that originally came up with the caring matrix, the focus on team members, family, community, and then physical, emotional, and spiritual. And so we put that together. And so we have all these different ministries. I could list them all out for you, but all these things that we've been trying to do for many years and have been doing, hopefully effectively, to minister to our people, our community, and like I said, locally, regionally, and internationally. And so it's led us to do a lot of things. And so about 2 years ago, I'm going to get the time wrong, 2 to 3 years ago, Sheila contacted us from his way at work. And a dear friend of mine had been working with her to also revamp their caring program. And so about a year before COVID, we started working with her, and she helped us really get laser beam focused on what we're doing in ministry and how we do it. And because one of the things you get caught up in, if maybe it's just me, but I try to do way too many things sometimes. And so I'd rather focus on, especially on ministry, on quality versus quantity, because I want to make sure that people that we're loving on and caring for really feel cared for and really feel like that it's making a difference versus just trying to just do all these different things, which we were so excited about, we wanted to do. But so she's helped us refine that and also restructure the whole caring committee and the way it functions, and also giving autonomy to that committee with the finances, to be able to use those finances how they as a committee, not the way Troy wants to spend it, but how they want to spend it. It's that ownership baton, right? You know what I'm saying? Passing that baton on. 100%. So that's where we are now. And so obviously COVID took a little bit of wind out of ourselves last year. We couldn't really get out and do a whole lot, but that structure's in place. It's working. And so we're really excited about coming out of this pandemic and getting back to doing a lot of these ministry initiatives. So
that's great.
I can share some more specific of the ministries if you want to. But
from a high level, though, Troy,
Mm-hmm.
what I've heard you say is 2 words: activities and then structure. And what I run into with a lot of organizations is there are any number of activities going on, and there's rarely a structure in place. And in many cases, they're doing things, but some things might be missing. Number one, the empowerment you mentioned, where the team itself has autonomy with this budget, and they get to spend the money how they decide. and as entry level employees, typically they're going to have a better understanding anyway of that need. But there's not just a team there. There's a structure in place that gives reporting back. You're measuring impact, and you know when you've made that impact versus the activities where you're doing a lot, you're juggling a lot of spinning plates, but there's some, it can be confusion. It can be chaos. And at the end of a year, you may say, man, we sure did a lot. I hope it made a difference. Yeah. And with a structure, I hope and pray, what I'm hearing you say is, no, now we know. Now we're going deeper in some areas. We've maybe reduced the count of activities, but we've got a structure in place that helps us to operate in a sustainable way. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Very much so. Matter of fact, just this morning, I have it on my task list every single month. After a few months into the month, I actually myself, I keep up with our ministry tracker. We have a whole ministry tracker spreadsheet, which actually feeds the website you were referring to earlier, where we talk about the different ministry things that we're doing, how many touches we had per se. And so I get to fill those out every single month. So I know how many ministry pamphlets we're giving out of each store location. I know how many people hit our website and heard the gospel and so on. So I've got all those listed, and it counts up the total touches we have. And so I actually just filled that out this morning. So that's how I know if we're having and making an impact for the kingdom. So
that's excellent.
That's powerful. What would you say to the business leader who's like, Troy, this is great, good for you, but that's just not going to work in my business. It's just too complex. It's too expensive. Yeah. My people are too whatever. My business is too large. My business is too small. Like the excuses are endless, right? What would you say to a business leader like that?
Well, you don't get to where we are overnight. And you've heard my story. We started way, way back then, but it was very simple. It was very basic. And I know it sounds cliche, but it really is one step at a time. You've got to start surrounding yourself with people who are like-minded, who will, where you can learn these best practices. Think about all the things I've already mentioned where I was able to learn about some of these best practices and how none of this stuff is new, right? I don't think, maybe a few things are new, but none of it's new. And all the things we're doing on this ministry grid I'm looking at right now, we learned from somebody else on how to do. How do you minister to people? How do you actually do it? How does it work every single day? And so that's what I did. I started surrounding myself with people, and through C12, through other Christians in business, and just started and doing a lot of reading and just spending time with other Christian business leaders and finding out how do they do it. But we started one thing at a time, just like I did with Dave Ramsey's Entre Leadership book. It was just one thing at a time. But over a long period of time, you really began to, have a very effective ministry inside of your organization. And but you can't overwhelm your people. You can't overwhelm yourself. I would highly recommend come down to Polydeck, go to Co-Consolidate, listen to how do they do this thing? And that's exactly what we did. Yeah, that's true. We'd be glad to share anything that we do with anybody, because people have been such a blessing to us, sharing. Oh my gosh, I go on and on about how many people have poured into us and shared and helped us learn how to do some of these things. It's been I might get emotional talking about it, but we've been so blessed over the years to have so many people help us. And so we try to help others now. But there's so many great ways that you surround yourself with people, learn how they practically do these things every single day. And that's
one fact I don't know. I have, you've told as an attorney, which I'm not, but you don't ever ask a question you don't know the answer to. But I'm pretty confident I know the answer to this one. Has anybody ever knocked on your door and said, let me share with you all of these ministry ideas and things? Or is it more often you just have to go out and knock on their doors?
Yeah, you have to. Yeah. Was a book called Never Eat Alone or something? I'm always trying to get with people that are, if they're doing something that I want to do, if they're being effective in some given area, go spend time with them. I cannot tell you how many times. That's why we came to Polydeck. That's why we came to Co-Consolidated.
Yeah.
That's why that's why I'm in C12. The education material in C12 is fantastic, but I'll be honest with you, the networking. Oh my goodness. Yeah. There are associations we're a member of in our industry called Hardy. I mean, I've learned so many things just from a business perspective and ministry perspective, networking with other people and believers inside the marketplace. That it's just, yeah, it's not going. Nobody's going to come to your door and share that with you.
They're
You're
not.
exactly right. But you got to go out and find it.
And rarely, if you do ask, rarely are they going to say no.
Yes.
And
Right. Exactly.
never will they eat you. Right?
Yeah,
They're not going to
ever.
kill you or
No.
eat you. So ask.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
But it's
Exactly
amazing
right.
how many people want to share what they've learned and what impact it's been
Yes.
on them and their company. So
Mhm.
obviously that's something we do with companies at His Way at Work. But man, the resources are out there if you want
They
to
are.
keep doing that.
Absolutely.
Very
What's a
much
piece
so.
of what's a piece of advice that you wish you would have been given 10 years earlier?
10, 20, 30,
That's fine.
40.
Pick a number.
Yeah.
Just 10 years. Yeah. 10. It all depends on what stage of life, right?
That's
Right.
true.
Yeah. Just I'd say 10 years ago. I think a piece of advice for me personally is this whole people side, the leadership side, the culture side is something I've really been focused on. As you well know, since 2000 and 2008 and up to now, things are a lot less stable than they used to be. And so one of the things for me personally, this is how to be a better financial steward, if that makes sense. I actually went and took accounting after I got out of high school. I needed to take an accounting course. I did take it, but I needed to better understand. I know how to read a P&L, but I need to understand more so about profitability, about net profit, about reading a P&L, which I can, but it's just understanding the whole financial aspect of our business. I've gotten a lot better at it over the past 10 years, and I wish that I wish I would have been more intentional. And I think people, if they're younger and you got to make sure you know what's happening in your business financially. So, I mean, this other stuff comes very natural to me. It's what I do, right? But I was not paying as much attention financially, and not that anything catastrophic happened. But guess what? Who predicted that a 100-year pandemic is going to happen, right?
Right.
I mean,
Yep.
who?
Right.
Nobody, right? And what about the housing bubble in 2008? So making sure that you have your financial house in order from a knowledge perspective, and you understand, do you have a plan in place if something goes south, And
Yeah.
so I'd say that would be the one thing the advice I would give is to myself 10 years ago is, Troy, you gotta get more deep into the financial part of your business.
Excellent.
That's great advice. You shared a lot of books and resources, but if a business leader, you recommend they start with one book. I know you mentioned the 5 dysfunctions of a team. What's the book? What's the number one book?
That would probably be
Is that the one? Okay.
That would probably be. It depends on what your goal is too, right? If you want to build healthy teams, if you want to build healthy cultures, those are just fantastic books. But I got to tell you, man, the other one that really has become, I hope this isn't heretical to say this, but the business Bible was good to great, right? Tim
Yeah.
Collins.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it doesn't get any better because in that book he describes they went and found 11 companies that have been successful over a period of time. And all of a sudden they started looking at these 11 companies and they all had the same things inside of them. It's the same. It's just crazy. And like when I heard that, I said, oh my gosh, I got to read this book. And so now I've read it and listened to it several times. And we, as part of our training, it's timeless now some of these companies are gone as things change, but you start ripping the covers back and looking inside those organizations and seeing, wow, man, this is what helps companies be successful. And he went in not knowing any of that. He didn't have an agenda. He just wanted to see, what was, if there are any similarities, and all of a sudden, boom, there they are.
Yeah.
The level 5 leader was one that really had a profound impact on me, because I lean towards more of the introverted side. I don't like that. That's a reason. By matter of fact, I read Good to Great. It led me to go get certified to teach crucial conversations, because the level 5 leader, they have a strong sense of authentic humility, but they also they're willing to debate and passionately debate issues as well as being humble. And so those two things don't go together.
Not easy.
Right?
Not
They
naturally.
just don't,
Yeah.
not naturally. And so that's what led me to go get to get certified to teach crucial conversations training. So it's a 16-hour course that we teach inside of our company right now. I don't think I've mentioned that yet, but it's wonderful. It's about how to have a difficult conversation, how to hold it well. And so, but Good to Great, I started there, and Five Dysfunctions. Those are the two books that are just have had a profound impact on me personally, and also our organization.
That's awesome. And you're a wealth of knowledge. I love how I asked for one book and there's 3 books, 2 courses,
Sorry.
a webinar.
Good.
No, I love it. It's
Sorry.
fantastic. This is it's so inspiring. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
As we close things out, you've been very generous with your time and your information, and I really appreciate that. What's that big takeaway? Someone who's a business leader, CEO, they're further back from you. They're wanting to transform their company. And what's that big takeaway from this episode that you want people to walk away with?
Another loaded question. It doesn't happen overnight. It just doesn't happen overnight. There's nothing you can do like this that's going to happen overnight. I've given presentations on culture and those kind of things. I've done it at C12 several times. And I think, people they look at what we've done. Like I looked at Dave the first time. I saw inside his organization and I got overwhelmed, but I said, no, can't do that. I got to do it one bite at a time. It's how you eat the elephant, right? And so that would be it. It doesn't happen overnight. But if you slow and steady implement and be consistent every day, and once you implement something, make sure it stays in place and you keep adding to that. It's fun. It's a blast. You start seeing results happen. It's exciting. And so that momentum begins to happen. And then, you're going to have your bumps and your hurdles and that kind of stuff. Things are going to have, that leadership. What's that? That you've seen that meme about leadership. People think it's like this, your business is like this. Actually, it's like this,
Exactly.
It happens. That's the way life is, And so, but it's just take your time and be patient. And it doesn't happen overnight, because also too, if you become so excited, if you become that leader that goes to a conference and comes back and starts just changing everything overnight, they're not going to follow you. They're not going to believe you. Oh my God. So it's a new thing of the day, but slow and steady, we'll get it done. Exactly.
I'm not positive it was Dave Ramsey. I think it was, but he was interviewing billionaires with a B in business and asked asked them the same question. What is your favorite book, favorite resource that you believe can have the greatest impact? And he said, The Tortoise and the Hare.
Wow.
He said, I read it in my company every
That's exactly
year.
right.
Was that Dave?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, it was. He actually, me and my wife teach Financial Peace University at our church, and that's part of the FPU curriculum. He talks about that, because that's the same way in finance, right?
Sure.
You slowly but steadily do the right thing over and over again. The world's running around with their hair on fire, but you slow and steady. The way he tells that story, it's hilarious.
Yeah, he's much better at it. I didn't have a whole lot of time. Right. But I went out and found an old copy, and I keep it on my bookcase. Did you really? And review it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, because I've gone through it with the company, and
that's good.
Anyway, it's exactly what you just said. So thank you for that, Troy.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, this has been an incredible conversation, Troy. Thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy guy, but I appreciate you just being so generous with all this information. And I think you've given a lot of people a lot of value. You have given it to me, and it's inspiration. So thank you.
Yep. Well, thank you for having me. It's been a blessing talking to you guys. And we're an open book. So if anybody ever wants, if they think we can help them in any way, we'd love to do that.
Sounds great.
Awesome.
Thank you for that, Troy.
All right. Thanks, Troy.
Thank you for listening. Hope you found some value in today's discussion. If you're inspired and you'd like to learn more, His Way at Work has a number of resources and tools for you. Just check us out at hwaw.com. If you're new here and you'd like to check out more episodes, just go to Facebook or to any podcast platform and make sure to subscribe there. Or if you know somebody that might find value in what we're talking about, feel free to share with them and point them in our direction. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next time.